Hello everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Mysteries video. Thank you all for being here. Today, we're discussing 3 more cold cases of Jane and John Does recently identified and the mysteries surrounding their deaths. Let's get into it. Number 3. Patricia Greenwood. March 30th, 1980 marked a dark day in the history books of Lake Erie, Ohio. That morning, the Sandusky police responded to a call about a bizarre object floating at the lake's edge. As they approached Cedar Point, officers realized the gravity of the situation. Backup was requested, and the area was cordoned off from nosy residents. Unfortunately, there's limited information about the discovery. According to the Detroit Free Press, the Sandusky Police Department found the body of a young woman. She was aged 20 to 30, she was 5'5" and 120 pounds, wearing what they described as a disco-style dress slumped at the edge of Lake Erie. The discovery rocked the community, and investigators immediately set about identifying their victim. Unfortunately, this initial piece of the investigation would never come to be. The Sandusky police did not release the woman's manner of death, which remains a point of contention. An autopsy revealed that the woman had several broken bones. Her femur, pelvis, and jaw were all shattered. However, the medical examiner couldn't be sure if the injuries had happened pre- or post-mortem. Several press releases and conferences were held, but nobody recognized the young woman in the size 12 disco dress. The case immediately went stale. There were no scars, jewelry pieces, or other identifying features on her body. In time, the woman was buried as the Erie County Jane Doe. There was no date of birth to adorn her grave, just March 30th, 1980. The Sandusky Police Department never gave up on the Erie County Jane Doe. But with limited evidence and resources, the case could not progress. It would take decades for the name Erie County Jane Doe to appear in the media again, but there was good news this time. In late 2021, the Porchlight Project, a nonprofit organization that helps to fund the solving of cold cases, announced that they would be willing to pay for the new DNA testing in the Erie County Jane Doe case. By 2021, genetic genealogy was beginning to peak, and the Sandusky Police Department believed this may be their only chance to close this case once and for all. Shortly after accepting the donation, the woman's remains were sent to Bode Technology in Virginia for further DNA analysis. Unfortunately, this kind of testing isn't instantaneous. Technicians worked exceedingly hard to research, prepare, and test samples for years. Almost 2 years later, in March 2023, the Sandusky Police Department and the Porchlight Project announced that the Erie County Jane Doe had been identified as 31-year-old Patricia Eleanor Greenwood. The announcement came on March 30th, 43 years to the day since she was discovered. Analysis found Patricia after discovering that she was one of 12 children who had been given up for adoption. Patricia was born in 1948 in Michigan and has lived in Traverse City, Bay City, and Saginaw. Patricia was never reported missing, and her siblings last saw her in 1979. The Sandusky Police Department is still working on Patricia's cold case, and while she has been identified, it's anything but closed. According to Patricia's sister, she may have been a sex worker at the time of her death, and the Sandusky Police Department believe that Patricia met with foul play. Unfortunately, no one in her family had a photograph of Patricia, and law enforcement is hoping to find anyone who knew her to come forward, as they'd like to get a better picture of what her life was like. Hopefully, with that information, they can be one step closer to finding her killer. Nick Edwards, a board member for Project Porchlight, gave this statement to the media regarding Patricia's case, quote, "Being able to give Patricia Greenwood her name back is the first step in finding the justice that she deserves. Thank you to the brilliant folks at Bode for the wonderful work that they do. Bode continues to impress, and their assistance to those in law enforcement is making it more difficult for bad people to get away with bad things. The Sandusky Police Department never gave up on this victim, even after all these years. Now it's time for the public to come together and provide information about Patricia Greenwood to the detectives. Patricia needs your help." The investigation into Patricia's murder continues, and if you have any information, you're asked to contact the Sandusky Police Department at 419-627-5980.
Police have turned the page in case number 9379, but there are still more questions.
At this point, we don't know where she went missing from. We're hoping that someone may see this and have known Patricia or her family. And hopefully from there, we can kind of retrace backwards the steps of her life.
Old-fashioned police work coupled with new technology helping to bring answers to families.
There's still a lot of people that are buried under John Doe and Jane Doe that are in plots all over Northeast Ohio. That's still, their voices have never been heard.
Number 2. Claudette Jean Zebolsky Powers. It was on February 16, 1986, when hikers along the Pacific Crest Trail made a grisly discovery at the Los Coyotes Indian Reservation. The partially decomposed body of a woman lay at the edge of the campsite. San Diego County Sheriff's Office was immediately dispatched to the scene and began their investigation. Moments later, the San Diego County Sheriff's Office received a call that would change everything. 14 miles from where the female victim was, there was found a man in a similar condition. Both victims were wearing thick jackets and layers of clothing. The similarities were too apparent to ignore, and investigators knew they had to identify both bodies before their killer could be identified. Law enforcement has withheld a lot of information in both of these cases. The manner of death of the man, found 14 miles away, has never been released to preserve the investigation's integrity. Detectives struggled to make any headway in either case. There was very little evidence, and the evidence the SDCSO did have was being withheld from the media. Her murder floated through the media for a few weeks before interest fizzled out. For decades, her case would go untouched, but the San Diego County Sheriff's Office knew there was family out there looking for their loved one. In 2023, the San Diego County Sheriff's Office turned to genetic genealogy. A sample of the woman's hair was submitted for analysis on websites such as 23andMe and GEDmatch. According to CBS, quote, using this DNA analysis, as well as census records and other public information, detectives were able to build family trees and track down relatives. Investigators had now identified the family tree, and all they had to do was find the missing link. Shortly after her DNA was submitted, law enforcement identified the Jane Doe as Claudette Jean Zebolsky Powers. The mother of two would have been 24 years old when she was brutally murdered. Detectives pieced together what they knew of her life before she disappeared. In the early 1980s, Claudette left her Michigan home and moved to Washington with her husband. By 1983, Claudette filed for divorce and found a property in San Diego County for herself and her daughters. However, in 1984, tragedy struck the Powers family when their patriarch passed away. Upon losing her father, Claudette felt lost. Her siblings recalled to officers that September 1984 was the last time they saw or spoke to their beloved sister at their father's funeral. After that, she dropped off the map. Claudette's family said that they never gave up looking for her. Her siblings hired a private investigator, but there is no sign. Her siblings and family loved Claudette, and they knew her disappearance was out of the ordinary. However, she was never reported missing formally, and her family had no idea that she'd been deceased all these years. Whilst Claudette has now been identified, investigators still have a long way to go in this investigation. They are now tasked with piecing Claudette's life together from September 1984 to 1986. There are some reports that she worked as a waitress in Escondido, and anyone with information or may have known Claudette is asked to come forward. Her sister said in a statement to the media, quote, "It's been really hard on her family. Someone knows what happened. A neighbor, anyone that knew her knows what happened. If you're still alive and you knew my sister and you knew what happened to her, please come forward. Please, we need closure." San Diego County Sheriff's Office has not released the manners of the death for Claudette or the John Doe, and the investigation is ongoing. What they have said is that they are looking for a male suspect and that Claudette had suffered a violent death. They are hoping to identify the man who had been murdered as well. They said that the man is a similar age to Claudette, mid-20s, and that they were both similarly dressed in thermals and clothing suitable for camping. They had both been deceased for approximately 2 weeks before their bodies were discovered. No other personal effects were found, and no camping gear, bags, or purses. The area was remote, and they would have needed a vehicle to get there. At this time, there are no sketches of John Doe available, nor much information that might help identify him.
DNA matched with her youngest sister, Laura Fries, who all these years wondered about her sister.
Claudette was a very loving and caring mom. She loved her kids very much. She loved her family very much. My mom can pass on now when it comes time, knowing that her oldest child has been found.
Anyone with information is asked to contact the Sheriff's Homicide Unit at 858-285-6330. There's a $1,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest. Number 1. Douglas Lynn Streeter. On October 26, 1976, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department were called to the Talisman Sugar Farm in Palm Beach County, Florida. This case would be like no other, sending investigators on an ever-twisting turning path. In the cane field lay the body of a man, who was later believed to be white or Native American. His remains were somewhat skeletonized, and that he had been exposed to the elements for at least 2 months before his discovery. Forensic experts deemed his death a homicide, with the gunshot wound to the back of his skull as the cause of death. He had a unique Timex watch with the initials LJ carved on the inside. Investigators also discovered that Palm Beach County John Doe had been shot 3 times overall. Over the years, several forensic photography experts have created several renditions of what he may have looked like in life, but these failed to produce any leads. In 2022, Othram, the nonprofit organization, joined forces with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Their press release from Othram states, quote, "This case was entered into NamUs as UP1300. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office sent skeletal remains for the unidentified homicide victim to Othram. After many months of hard work, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office announced that the 1976 Palm Beach John Doe has been identified as 29-year-old Douglas Lynn Streeter." In April 1976, Douglas and a group of friends traveled from his hometown of Bryan, Ohio to Florida on a boys' trip in March 1976. According to Douglas's friends, he was last seen in the vicinity of the Spanish Oaks Apartments in Boca Raton, Florida in April 1976. He went by the nickname Strut. From Florida, it seems he became separated from his friends and disappeared. His friends returned home without him. His estimated time of death was around August, but he disappeared in April. No one knows what he'd been doing in the months between his disappearance and murder. Anyone with information is asked to contact Detective John Cogburn of the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office at 561-688-4063. There's a $3,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest. Well, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. As always, if you want to support the channel, the easiest way is to hit the like button. You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. Other ways to support the channel by joining my Patreon or channel membership. I also have merch, and you'll find all the links in the description box, plus a few extras. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and now Twitch for more. But with that being said, thank you so much for being here and supporting what I do. It is very much appreciated. That's it for me. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.